Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are wandering into the gentle world of plants, where life unfolds in slow motion and silence speaks volumes. From the smallest blade of grass to the tallest tree touching the clouds, plants are the quiet architects of our world. They build oxygen from sunlight, turn minerals into nourishment, and create the very foundation of life on Earth. This is not just a journey through botany. It is a journey through time, patience, and the remarkable ways that rooted organisms shape our planet. The things we will discover are not only fascinating, but beautifully real. These living beings might challenge what we think growth means, or what consciousness requires. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let the night settle around you and allow your mind to relax. Let us begin. Plants create their own food through a process called photosynthesis. Inside the leaves of every green plant, millions of tiny cellular factories are working in silence. These factories, called chloroplasts, contain a pigment called chlorophyll that gives plants their green color. When sunlight touches a leaf, the chlorophyll absorbs the light energy and uses it to transform carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil into glucose, a simple sugar that feeds the plant. As a byproduct of this process, oxygen is released into the atmosphere. The formula is elegantly simple. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combine with 6 molecules of water, using light energy, to create 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. This process has been happening for billions of years, quietly converting the energy of distant stars into the chemical energy that powers nearly all life on Earth. Without photosynthesis, the atmosphere would be devoid of oxygen, and complex life as we know it would never have evolved. Every breath you take traces back to this ancient process happening in leaves all around you. The green color of plants is not a choice, but a consequence. Chlorophyll, the pigment that drives photosynthesis, absorbs light most efficiently in the blue and red wavelengths of the visible spectrum. Green light, however, is reflected rather than absorbed. This is why we see plants as green. They are essentially rejecting that particular color of light, bouncing it back to our eyes. In a sense, the color we associate most strongly with plants is the one color they do not want. This reflected green light represents energy they cannot use, energy that escapes the leaf and paints our world in shades of emerald and jade. Different plants have evolved different pigments to capture different wavelengths, which is why some leaves turn brilliant reds, oranges, and yellows in autumn as chlorophyll breaks down and other pigments become visible. But during the growing season, chlorophyll reigns supreme, absorbing the light that matters most and reflecting the rest into our grateful eyes. Bamboo is the fastest growing plant on Earth. Some species can grow up to 91 centimeters in a single day, which translates to nearly 4 centimeters per hour. If you were patient enough, you could actually watch bamboo grow in real time. This extraordinary speed is possible because bamboo is not a tree but a grass, and it grows differently than woody plants. Its stems are hollow tubes that require less material to build, and they reach their full height in just a few months. Once a bamboo stem reaches its maximum height, it stops growing taller and begins to mature and harden over the next several years. The stems grow from underground networks called rhizomes, which store energy produced by mature plants and channel it into new shoots. These rhizomes can spread horizontally through the soil, creating dense groves of interconnected bamboo that share resources. In optimal conditions with plenty of water, warmth, and nutrients, bamboo shoots can burst through the ground and climb toward the sky at a pace that seems almost magical. The fastest recorded bamboo species, certain varieties found in tropical Asia, have been documented growing 35 inches in 24 hours, making them one of nature's most impressive demonstrations of rapid growth. Trees and plants produce the oxygen we breathe. A single mature oak tree can produce approximately 100,000 liters of oxygen per year. That works out to about 274 liters per day, which represents nearly half of what an average human needs in a day to survive. Different tree species produce different amounts of oxygen based on their size, health, and leaf area. Douglas fir, spruce, beech, and maple trees are among the highest oxygen producers because they have large leaf masses that can capture more sunlight for photosynthesis. In contrast, pine trees with their thin needles produce less oxygen than their broadleaf cousins. Urban forests in the United States alone produce an estimated 61 million metric tons of oxygen annually, which is enough to offset the oxygen consumption of roughly 2/3 of the nation's population. Old, mature trees produce more oxygen than young trees because they have more leaves and a greater capacity for photosynthesis. This is one reason why protecting old-growth forests matters so much. They are not just carbon stores or wildlife habitat. They are the lungs of the planet, steadily exhaling the gas that keeps us all alive. Plants sleep at night through a process called nyctinasty. This is the circadian rhythm-driven movement of leaves and flowers in response to darkness. When the sun sets, many plants close their leaves or flowers, folding them inward or drooping them downward as if settling in for rest. At dawn, they reopen and return to their daytime positions. This behavior is especially common in legumes, the bean family of plants, but it occurs in many other species as well. The movements are controlled by specialized structures at the base of leaves called pulvini. These are clusters of motor cells that can swell or shrink rapidly by changing the amount of water they contain. When potassium ions move into certain cells on one side of the pulvinus, water follows by osmosis, causing those cells to swell and push the leaf into a new position. When ions move out, the cells deflate and the leaf moves again. These movements are controlled by an internal biological clock that keeps time independently of external light cues. Even if you place a nyctinastic plant in constant darkness, it will continue to open and close its leaves on a roughly 24-hour schedule for days or even weeks. The exact reason for these sleep movements remains mysterious. Scientists have proposed several hypotheses. The movements might help plants conserve water by reducing the surface area exposed to dry night air. They might protect delicate leaf tissues from cold temperatures. They might reduce the visibility of leaves to nocturnal herbivores, or make it easier for predators to spot those herbivores. Charles Darwin himself believed that nyctinasty helps reduce the risk of freezing. Whatever the reason, watching a plant slowly fold its leaves at dusk and reopen them at sunrise is a gentle reminder that even rooted organisms have rhythms and routines, invisible dances choreographed by internal clocks we cannot see. The oldest living tree is a bristlecone pine named Methuselah. It grows in the White Mountains of California and is estimated to be 4,853 years old, based on tree ring evidence. Methuselah was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were built. It was 1,000 years old when humans invented writing. It has lived through the entire span of recorded human history and continues to grow, slowly adding one thin ring to its trunk each year. Bristlecone pines are able to achieve such extreme ages because they grow in harsh, cold, dry environments where few other trees can survive. The slow growth means dense, resinous wood that resists rot and insect damage. Even after parts of the tree have been eliminated by wind or lightning, the remaining living tissue can persist for centuries. Some bristlecone pines have only a narrow strip of living bark connecting the roots to a few green branches, yet they continue to photosynthesize and grow. These ancient trees are not the only long-lived organisms on Earth. A clonal grove of aspen trees in Utah, called Pando, is estimated to be over 80,000 years old, though each individual trunk may only live 100 years before being replaced by new shoots from the shared root system. The longevity of trees reminds us that time moves differently for different forms of life. What seems like an eternity to us is merely a fraction of a tree's experience. Plants communicate with each other through underground networks. Beneath the forest floor, tree roots intertwine with a vast web of fungal threads called mycorrhizae. These fungal networks connect the roots of multiple trees and plants, forming what scientists sometimes call the wood wide web. The fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, wrapping around them or even penetrating into the root cells. The plant provides the fungus with sugars made through photosynthesis, and in return, the fungus extends far into the soil, gathering water and mineral nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that it shares with the plant. This relationship is beneficial to both parties. But the network does more than just trade nutrients. Research suggests that trees can use these fungal networks to send signals to each other. When a tree is attacked by insects or infected by disease, it can emit chemical warning signals through the fungal network. Neighboring trees detect these signals and begin producing defensive compounds in anticipation of attack, even before the threat reaches them. The network can also transfer carbon and other resources from healthy trees to sick or shaded neighbors, helping seedlings survive in the deep shade of the forest floor where photosynthesis is difficult. Older, larger trees, sometimes called mother trees, have the most extensive fungal connections and can channel resources to many smaller plants. This sharing behavior challenges our understanding of competition in nature. Trees are not just competing for light and soil nutrients. They are also cooperating, helping each other survive through underground partnerships we are only beginning to understand. The mycelium of the largest fungi can spread across thousands of acres and be over 2,000 years old, older than many of the trees it connects. These fungal networks are the internet of the forest, carrying messages and resources through dark channels we cannot see. A sunflower head is not one flower but hundreds. What looks like a single large bloom is actually a composite of many tiny individual flowers called florets. The fuzzy brown center of a sunflower contains 1,000 to 2,000 individual florets, each capable of producing a single sunflower seed. The yellow petals around the edge are also individual flowers, though they are sterile and exist only to attract pollinators. Each tiny floret in the center opens in a spiral pattern, starting from the outside and moving inward, ensuring that pollination happens over an extended period. The spiral arrangement of florets follows mathematical patterns found throughout nature, specifically the Fibonacci sequence. If you count the spiral arms in a sunflower head, you will often find Fibonacci numbers like 21, 34, 55, or 89. This arrangement allows the florets to pack together as efficiently as possible, maximizing the number of seeds a sunflower can produce. Sunflowers also exhibit heliotropism when young. Their heads track the sun across the sky from east to west during the day, then slowly reorient eastward during the night to be ready for dawn. This sun-tracking behavior maximizes the light energy they can capture for photosynthesis. Once the flower matures and begins producing seeds, the tracking stops and the flower faces permanently eastward. Scientists have discovered that east-facing sunflowers attract more pollinators in the morning because the orientation allows them to warm up faster in the morning sun, making them more appealing to bees seeking warmth. The largest living organism on Earth is a tree. Well, technically it is many trees that share a single root system. The Pando aspen grove in Utah consists of over 40,000 individual tree trunks, but they are all genetically identical clones growing from one massive underground root network. The entire organism weighs approximately 6,000 metric tons and covers 106 acres. Each trunk may live for only about 130 years, but the root system has been alive for an estimated 80,000 years, making it one of the oldest living things on the planet. The name Pando means "I spread" in Latin, a fitting description for this sprawling superorganism. Because all the trunks are connected underground, they share nutrients and water. If one section of the grove is stressed by drought or damage, resources can flow from healthier sections to support it. The grove also synchronizes its behavior, turning its leaves golden in autumn and dropping them at nearly the same time across the entire colony. Pando faces threats from grazing deer and elk that eat young shoots before they can mature, preventing the colony from regenerating. Without intervention, this ancient organism could eventually die out, losing its battle against browsing animals in a dramatically changed landscape. Its existence reminds us that individuality in nature is not always clear-cut. Where does one organism end and another begin? For Pando, the answer is not simple. Some plants can live without soil. Air plants, members of the bromeliad family, grow naturally on tree branches in tropical forests, absorbing water and nutrients directly from the air and rain. Their roots function mainly to anchor them to surfaces, rather than to draw nutrients from soil. Tiny scales on their leaves, called trichomes, capture moisture and dissolved minerals from the humid air. When it rains, water runs down tree bark, carrying with it small amounts of nutrients that the air plants absorb. Aquatic plants have also evolved to survive without traditional soil. They absorb nutrients directly from the surrounding water through their submerged leaves and stems. Species like water lilies and lotuses have roots that anchor them in mud, but they can also absorb nutrients through their floating leaves. Some aquatic plants like duckweed have no roots at all, floating freely on the water surface and absorbing everything they need through their tiny bodies. These plants remind us that the standard model of plant life, with roots in soil, stems in air, and leaves in light, is just one strategy among many. Life finds ways to adapt to nearly every environment on Earth, even environments that seem impossible. The Amazon rainforest produces about half of the world's oxygen supply. This is a commonly repeated statement, but it is not quite accurate. The Amazon produces about 6% of the world's oxygen through photosynthesis. But it also consumes nearly all of that oxygen through the respiration of trees, animals, bacteria, and fungi living within it. The net oxygen contribution of the Amazon is close to zero. The real oxygen factories of Earth are the oceans, where photosynthetic phytoplankton and algae produce about 70% of the planet's oxygen. These microscopic organisms float near the ocean surface, conducting photosynthesis just like land plants, but on a scale so vast that it dwarfs terrestrial production. A single teaspoon of seawater can contain millions of these tiny organisms, each one releasing oxygen molecules into the water that eventually diffuse into the atmosphere. Land plants, including all the forests of Earth, produce about 30% of atmospheric oxygen. However, the Amazon and other forests are still crucially important. They store enormous amounts of carbon in their wood and soil, preventing it from entering the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. They regulate rainfall patterns, cool the planet through evapotranspiration, and support unimaginable biodiversity. The oxygen they produce may be consumed within the forest, but their role in maintaining Earth's climate and ecosystems cannot be overstated. The Amazon breathes, and its breath shapes the weather of an entire continent. Trees improve air quality by removing pollutants. Their leaves act as filters, trapping particulate matter on their surfaces and absorbing gaseous pollutants through tiny pores called stomata. The stomata, which normally open to take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, also inadvertently inhale harmful gases like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and ozone. Once inside the leaf, these gases diffuse across cell surfaces where they are broken down and rendered harmless. Particulate matter, which consists of tiny solid particles released by vehicles, industry, and combustion, cannot be absorbed like gases. Instead, these particles stick to the waxy or hairy surfaces of leaves. When it rains, the particles are washed off the tree and carried into the soil, where they break down or bind to soil particles. Urban trees remove an estimated 711,000 metric tons of air pollution from the atmosphere each year in the United States alone. In cities where pollution is concentrated, the presence of trees can significantly improve public health by reducing respiratory illnesses, asthma, and other conditions linked to poor air quality. Different tree species vary in their ability to filter pollutants. Trees with rough bark, hairy leaves, or complex leaf structures tend to capture more particulate matter. Evergreen trees, which keep their leaves year-round, provide air cleaning benefits even in winter when deciduous trees are bare. The air quality improvements provided by urban forests have been valued at billions of dollars annually when measured in terms of reduced healthcare costs and improved quality of life. Trees are not just decorative additions to cities. They are essential infrastructure for human health. Plants can heal. Many of the medicines we depend on come from plants. Aspirin, one of the most widely used drugs in the world, was originally derived from willow bark, which contains a compound called salicin. Indigenous peoples discovered centuries ago that chewing willow bark could relieve pain and reduce fever. Modern chemistry isolated and modified the active compound to create acetyl salicylic acid, the aspirin we know today. Digitalis, used to treat heart conditions, comes from foxglove plants. Morphine and codeine, powerful painkillers, are extracted from opium poppies. The anti-cancer drug paclitaxel was originally isolated from the bark of Pacific yew trees. Quinine, which treats malaria, comes from the bark of cinchona trees. Even today, scientists continue to discover new medicinal compounds in plants. Many modern drugs are synthetic versions of molecules that plants produce naturally to defend themselves against insects, fungi, or other threats. Aloe vera, a succulent plant, contains a gel that soothes burns and skin irritations. Chamomile flowers make a tea that can calm anxiety and promote relaxation. Ginger root helps settle upset stomachs. Garlic has antibacterial properties. Turmeric contains compounds with anti-inflammatory effects. The relationship between humans and medicinal plants is ancient. Before modern medicine, plant-based remedies were the only option, and traditional healers accumulated vast knowledge about which plants could treat which ailments. Today, that knowledge is being studied scientifically, revealing the chemical mechanisms behind traditional remedies and sometimes validating what indigenous cultures have known for generations. Plants do not make these compounds to help us. They make them for their own survival. But we have learned to benefit from their chemical defenses, transforming them into tools for healing. A single tree can be home to thousands of species. The canopy of a large rainforest tree might host insects, spiders, frogs, snakes, birds, bats, and countless species of mosses, lichens, ferns, and other plants. Some of these organisms spend their entire lives in the canopy, never descending to the ground. Scientists studying rainforest canopies have found previously unknown species living in the treetops, entire ecosystems suspended hundreds of feet above the forest floor. The bark provides habitat for insects and their larvae. Cavities and holes become nest sites for birds and homes for small mammals. Roots create spaces where soil animals thrive. Even a single oak tree in a temperate forest can support over 2,000 species of organisms when you count all the insects, birds, fungi, lichens, and microscopic life it harbors. This ecological complexity makes trees keystone species. Their presence or absence shapes entire ecosystems. When a large tree falls in a forest, it creates a gap in the canopy that allows light to reach the forest floor, triggering new growth. As the fallen tree decays over decades, it becomes habitat for beetles, salamanders, and fungi. It releases nutrients slowly back into the soil, feeding the next generation of plants. Even in dying, a tree continues to support life. The interconnections are so complex that removing one tree species from a forest can trigger cascading effects throughout the entire ecosystem. Plants respond to sound. Studies have shown that plants can detect vibrations, including those produced by sound waves, and they may alter their growth in response. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but it appears that certain frequencies of sound can influence cell division and expansion. In one experiment, plants exposed to classical music grew faster than plants in silence. Plants exposed to rock music or harsh noises grew more slowly. The quality of the sound seems to matter, though the experiments are difficult to control for all variables. Some researchers believe that plants evolved to detect vibrations because it helps them sense their environment. The buzzing of pollinating bees, for example, produces vibrations at specific frequencies. Some flowers respond to these vibrations by releasing more pollen. Roots may detect the sound of running water underground and grow toward it. Plants might sense the chewing sounds of insect larvae and ramp up production of defensive chemicals. The idea that talking to plants helps them grow is a folk belief that has some scientific support, though it is unclear whether it is the sound of the voice, the carbon dioxide in exhaled breath, or simply the increased attention and care that makes the difference. What is clear is that plants are far from insensitive. They detect and respond to a wide range of stimuli, including vibrations, in ways we are only beginning to understand. The world is full of sounds we cannot hear and signals we cannot perceive, and plants are tuned into some of those channels. Cacti can store enormous amounts of water. The baobab tree, which grows in Africa and is technically not a cactus but shares similar adaptations, can store between 1,000 and 120,000 liters of water in its swollen trunk. During the dry season, the tree slowly uses this stored water to survive when no rain falls. The trunk swells when water is abundant and shrinks when water is scarce, allowing the tree to persist through droughts that would overwhelm other plants. Saguaro cacti in the American Southwest can store hundreds of liters of water in their thick, ribbed stems. The ribs allow the stem to expand like an accordion when water is absorbed and contract when water is used. The thick, waxy skin prevents water loss through evaporation. Most cacti have also abandoned traditional leaves in favor of spines, reducing the surface area through which water can escape while still providing some defense against herbivores. These adaptations allow cacti to thrive in deserts where rainfall is rare and unpredictable. When rain does come, cactus roots spread wide and shallow beneath the soil surface, quickly absorbing as much water as possible before it evaporates or drains away. The stored water can sustain the plant for months or even years. Some desert plants go dormant during droughts, shutting down most of their metabolic activity to conserve resources. Others have deep taproots that reach underground water sources far below the surface. The diversity of drought survival strategies is a testament to the power of evolution to solve problems in creative ways. The oldest botanical garden was founded in the Vatican City in 1278. Pope Nicholas III established this garden as a place to grow medicinal herbs and study plants. Botanical gardens have a long history as centers of learning, conservation, and beauty. They serve multiple purposes. They preserve rare and endangered plant species, some of which exist nowhere else in the world. They educate the public about plant diversity and ecology. They conduct research on plant biology, conservation, and horticulture. And they provide peaceful spaces where people can connect with nature. Many botanical gardens maintain seed banks, storing seeds from thousands of plant species in climate-controlled vaults as insurance against extinction. If a species disappears from the wild, the seeds can potentially be used to reintroduce it. These collections are especially important as climate change and habitat destruction threaten plant species around the world. Botanical gardens also played a crucial role in the historical exchange of plants between continents. European colonial powers used botanical gardens to study and propagate economically important plants like rubber, quinine, coffee, and tea, sometimes with profound social and economic consequences. Today, botanical gardens continue to be vital institutions. They are living museums, research centers, and conservation strongholds, protecting the botanical heritage of our planet and sharing it with anyone who wants to learn. Vanilla flavoring comes from the pod of an orchid. The vanilla orchid, native to Mexico, produces long green pods that are harvested and cured through a complex process involving heating and fermentation. The result is the dark, aromatic vanilla beans used in cooking and perfumery. Natural vanilla is one of the most expensive spices in the world, second only to saffron, because vanilla orchids are difficult to cultivate and the pollination process is labor-intensive. In their native habitat, vanilla orchids are pollinated by specific species of bees and hummingbirds. When vanilla was introduced to other parts of the world, these pollinators were not present, so vanilla plants would flower but produce no pods. The problem was solved in the 1800s when a 12-year-old enslaved boy named Edmund Albius, living on the island of Réunion, discovered a technique for hand-pollinating vanilla flowers. His method is still used today. Each flower must be pollinated by hand within hours of opening, and each plant produces only a handful of pods per year. The pods must then be cured for several months to develop their characteristic flavor and aroma. Most of the vanilla used today is actually synthetic vanillin produced in laboratories, but natural vanilla remains prized for its complex flavor profile that cannot be fully replicated artificially. The story of vanilla reminds us that even common flavors we take for granted have extraordinary origins and depend on intricate ecological relationships. Oak trees do not produce acorns until they are 50 years old. This long juvenile period means that oak trees must survive for decades before they can reproduce. Once they begin producing acorns, they can continue for hundreds of years, releasing thousands of acorns each fall. However, not every year is equally productive. Oaks and many other trees exhibit mast years, periodic events when nearly all the trees of a species produce huge crops of seeds simultaneously. These mast years occur irregularly, perhaps once every few years, and they serve an evolutionary purpose. By flooding the environment with more seeds than animals can possibly eat, the trees ensure that some seeds will survive to germinate. In non-mast years, seed production is low, and seed-eating animals like squirrels and jays may consume nearly every acorn. This strategy keeps predator populations in check. If trees produced large seed crops every year, predator populations would grow large enough to consume them all. By producing boom and bust cycles, trees keep predators off balance. The mechanisms that synchronize mast years across entire forests are not fully understood, but they may involve weather cues that all trees in a region experience simultaneously. Oak trees also have another remarkable trait. They are struck by lightning more than any other tree species. This is partly because oaks tend to be tall and often grow in open areas, making them likely targets. But it may also be because oak wood has lower electrical resistance than some other trees, making it more conductive. Lightning strikes can harm or destroy trees, but they can also benefit forests by starting small fires that clear undergrowth and recycle nutrients. Carrots were originally purple. The orange carrot we know today is a relatively recent invention, developed by Dutch farmers in the 1600s. Wild carrots and early cultivated varieties came in purple, yellow, white, and red, but rarely orange. The orange color comes from high concentrations of beta-carotene, a pigment that the human body converts into vitamin A. Dutch growers selectively bred carrots for their orange color, possibly to honor the Dutch royal family, the House of Orange. The breeding was successful, and orange carrots became the standard. Today, you can still find purple, yellow, and white carrots in some markets, often sold as heirloom or rainbow varieties. They have different flavor profiles and nutrient compositions. Purple carrots get their color from anthocyanins, the same compounds that make blueberries blue. These heirloom varieties remind us that many of the fruits and vegetables we consider normal are actually highly modified versions of wild plants, shaped by thousands of years of human selection. Nearly every crop plant we eat today looks dramatically different from its wild ancestor. Corn evolved from a grass with tiny seeds. Watermelons were originally small and bitter. Bananas were full of large, hard seeds. Selective breeding has transformed these wild plants into the familiar foods we depend on, altering their size, taste, color, and nutritional content to suit human preferences. The California redwood and giant sequoia are the tallest and largest living organisms on Earth. Coast redwoods can grow over 115 meters tall, reaching heights that place their crowns in a different climate from their roots. The tallest known redwood, named Hyperion, stands 115.92 meters tall. Giant sequoias, though shorter than coast redwoods, are more massive. The largest sequoia, named General Sherman, has a trunk volume of over 1,487 cubic meters and weighs an estimated 2 million kilograms. These trees can live for thousands of years. Some redwoods are over 2,000 years old, meaning they were saplings when the Roman Empire was at its height. The size of these trees is made possible by several factors. They grow in mild, moist climates with abundant rainfall and moderate temperatures. Their thick, fibrous bark resists fire, insects, and disease. Their wood is resistant to rot, and they can live for centuries, accumulating mass year after year. Climbing into the canopy of an old-growth redwood is like entering another world. The trunks are so wide that multiple people can stand inside burned-out cavities. The canopy is so high that fog often shrouds the upper branches, while the forest floor remains clear. Other plants grow on the thick branches, creating suspended gardens hundreds of feet in the air. Entire ecosystems exist in the crowns of these giant trees, including salamanders that live their entire lives in pools of water trapped in tree hollows, never descending to the ground. Ginkgo is one of the oldest living tree species. Fossils of ginkgo leaves, dating back 250 million years, look almost identical to modern ginkgo trees. This means ginkgo has remained essentially unchanged since the time of the dinosaurs. It is the only surviving member of an ancient group of plants that once covered much of the world. All other species in its family went extinct millions of years ago. Ginkgo is sometimes called a living fossil because it has survived while its relatives vanished. Ginkgo trees are remarkably hardy. They resist pollution, pests, and disease better than most trees. They can survive in poor soil and harsh urban conditions. They are also resistant to radiation and fire. After the atomic bombing of Hiroshima in 1945, 6 ginkgo trees near the explosion's epicenter survived, even though surrounding buildings and other plants were obliterated. Those trees are still alive today, growing in a city that has been completely rebuilt around them. Ginkgo trees are dioecious, meaning individual trees are either male or female. Female trees produce fleshy seeds with an outer coating that smells unpleasant when it decays, which is why most ginkgos planted in cities are male trees. The leaves turn a brilliant golden yellow in autumn before falling, often all within a single day, carpeting the ground in a glowing blanket. Ginkgo extract is used in traditional medicine and is sold as a supplement claimed to improve memory and cognitive function, though scientific evidence for these benefits is mixed. Tulips once caused an economic crisis. In the 1600s in Holland, tulips became extraordinarily popular. They were exotic imports from Turkey, and wealthy Dutch citizens competed to own the rarest varieties. Tulip bulbs began to be traded like stocks, with prices rising to absurd levels. At the peak of tulip mania, a single bulb of a rare variety could sell for more than the price of a house. People mortgaged their homes to buy tulip bulbs, hoping to resell them at a profit. The market for tulips became a speculative bubble, driven not by the actual value of the flowers, but by the belief that prices would continue to rise. In 1637, the bubble burst. Prices collapsed suddenly, and many people who had invested heavily in tulip bulbs were financially ruined. The Dutch economy was severely disrupted. Tulip mania is often cited as one of the first recorded financial bubbles in history, a cautionary tale about speculation and irrational markets. Today, tulips remain popular ornamental flowers, and the Netherlands is the world's largest producer of tulip bulbs, but they no longer command absurd prices. The story of tulip mania shows how cultural value can be detached from intrinsic worth, and how beauty, rarity, and status can combine to create economic phenomena that seem nonsensical in hindsight. Some plants are carnivorous. They have evolved to capture and digest insects and other small animals to supplement the nutrients they obtain from soil. These plants typically grow in nutrient-poor environments like bogs and swamps, where the soil lacks sufficient nitrogen and phosphorus. By trapping and digesting prey, carnivorous plants gain access to nutrients that are unavailable through their roots. Venus flytraps use hinged leaves lined with tiny trigger hairs. When an insect touches the hairs twice within a short period, the trap snaps shut in a fraction of a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. The trap then seals and secretes digestive enzymes, breaking down the insect's soft tissues over several days. Pitcher plants use a different strategy. Their leaves form deep tubes filled with digestive fluid. Insects are attracted by nectar and bright colors, then slip on the waxy interior surface and fall into the liquid, where they drown and are digested. Sundews have leaves covered with sticky, glistening droplets on the ends of hair like tentacles. Insects mistake the droplets for nectar or dew and become stuck. The tentacles slowly bend inward, wrapping the prey and bringing it into contact with digestive glands. Carnivorous plants remind us that the boundary between plant and animal behavior is not as clear as we might think. These plants actively hunt, trap, digest, and extract nutrients from prey in ways that blur traditional categories. They show that plants are capable of rapid movement, chemical sensing, and complex behaviors when evolutionary pressures favor such adaptations. The Amazon rainforest spans over 5.5 million square kilometers across 9 countries. It is the largest rainforest on Earth, covering about 40% of South America. The biodiversity within the Amazon is staggering. Scientists estimate that the forest contains 10% of all species on Earth, though many remain undiscovered and unnamed. There are over 16,000 tree species in the Amazon. Some areas are so dense with life that a single hectare can contain more tree species than exist in all of North America. The forest generates its own rainfall through transpiration, the process by which trees release water vapor through their leaves. This moisture rises, condenses into clouds, and falls as rain, creating a self-sustaining cycle. Disrupting large sections of the forest can break this cycle, potentially turning rainforest into savanna. The Amazon River, which flows through the forest, is the second longest river in the world, but carries more water than any other river, discharging about 200,000 cubic meters per second into the Atlantic Ocean. The river is so large that it changes the salinity of the ocean hundreds of kilometers offshore. Indigenous peoples have lived in the Amazon for at least 11,000 years, developing deep knowledge of the forest and sustainable ways to live within it. Today, the Amazon faces threats from deforestation, agriculture, mining, and climate change. But it remains one of the most important ecosystems on the planet, regulating climate, storing carbon, and harboring unimaginable biological wealth. Trees can lower surface temperatures significantly. In cities, the urban heat island effect causes temperatures to be several degrees warmer than surrounding rural areas, because buildings, roads, and other infrastructure absorb and retain heat. Trees mitigate this effect through 2 mechanisms. First, they provide shade, blocking sunlight from reaching surfaces that would otherwise absorb heat. Second, they cool the air through evapotranspiration, the process of releasing water vapor from their leaves. As water evaporates, it absorbs heat energy, cooling the surrounding air just like sweat cools your skin. A single large tree can transpire hundreds of liters of water per day, providing a cooling effect equivalent to several air conditioning units. Studies have shown that neighborhoods with abundant tree cover can be several degrees cooler than nearby areas with few trees. This cooling effect is most pronounced on hot summer days when it matters most. In addition to cooling temperatures, trees improve quality of life in cities by providing shade, reducing energy costs for cooling buildings, supporting wildlife, and creating spaces where people can relax and connect with nature. Urban forestry is increasingly recognized as an essential component of climate adaptation strategies, helping cities become more livable as global temperatures rise. Coffee plants produce caffeine as a pesticide. Caffeine is toxic to many insects and helps protect coffee plants from herbivores. The compound interferes with insect nervous systems, deterring them from eating the leaves. Humans, however, have learned to enjoy caffeine for its stimulant effects. It blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, reducing feelings of tiredness and improving alertness and concentration. Coffee is one of the most widely traded commodities in the world, second only to oil. Billions of people drink coffee every day, relying on the chemical defense mechanism of a tropical plant to help them wake up and stay focused. Tea plants also produce caffeine for similar defensive purposes. Chocolate contains caffeine too, though in smaller amounts, along with another stimulant called theobromine. Many of the substances we consume for pleasure or medicine are plant defense chemicals. Plants cannot run from threats, so they evolved sophisticated chemical warfare instead, producing thousands of compounds to repel predators, inhibit competitors, or attract beneficial organisms. We have learned to exploit these chemicals for our own purposes, turning defensive poisons into beverages, medicines, and spices. The relationship is ancient. Humans have been consuming plant stimulants, medicines, and psychoactive compounds for thousands of years, and these plants have shaped human culture, trade, and history in profound ways. Some trees can walk. Certain palm species, particularly the walking palm, native to Central and South America, have unusual root systems that appear to allow them to shift position over time. The tree grows new roots on one side, while old roots on the opposite side become exposed and eventually rot away. Over years or decades, this process can move the tree several meters from its original position. The tree is not walking in any active sense, but the shifting root pattern does relocate it slowly. The mechanism may help the tree move toward light if it finds itself shaded by taller neighbors, or it may help the tree escape from unstable soil. The idea of walking trees has been popularized, though some scientists question whether the movement is purposeful or simply a consequence of how these palms grow. Regardless of the interpretation, the phenomenon reminds us that plants, though rooted, are not entirely immobile. They grow toward resources, shift their positions, and adapt to changing conditions in ways that can be surprisingly dynamic over long timescales. There are over 300,000 identified plant species, and the list grows every year. Botanists continue to discover new species in remote rainforests, mountains, and other underexplored habitats. Many newly discovered species are rare, with small populations confined to limited areas. Some may already be on the brink of extinction before we even learn they exist. The true number of plant species on Earth is unknown. Estimates range from 390,000 to over 400,000 species, but vast regions remain poorly studied. The deep interiors of tropical rainforests in particular likely harbor countless undescribed species. Each plant species is the product of millions of years of evolution, a unique combination of genes and adaptations shaped by the environment it inhabits. When a species goes extinct, that unique lineage is lost forever. Plant extinctions are accelerating due to habitat destruction, climate change, invasive species, and other human impacts. Scientists race to catalogue and protect plant diversity before it vanishes, knowing that among the unknown species may be sources of new medicines, foods, or other resources humanity could depend on in the future. Bananas contain a natural chemical that can make people feel happy. Bananas are rich in tryptophan, an amino acid that the body converts into serotonin, a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of well-being and happiness. They also contain vitamin B6, which helps the body produce serotonin. Eating a banana will not dramatically alter your mood, but the nutrients it provides do support brain chemistry in subtle ways. The common banana we eat today, the Cavendish variety, is actually a clone. Nearly all commercial bananas are genetically identical, grown from cuttings rather than seeds. This lack of genetic diversity makes the global banana crop vulnerable to diseases. In the 1950s, a fungal disease called Panama disease wiped out the Gros Michel banana, which was the dominant commercial variety at the time. The Cavendish replaced it, but now a new strain of Panama disease threatens Cavendish bananas. Scientists are working to develop resistant varieties or alternative species before the disease spreads globally. The word banana comes from an Arabic word for fingers, a reference to the way bananas grow in clusters that resemble a hand. A cluster of bananas is called a hand, and individual bananas are called fingers. Wild bananas, unlike the seedless varieties we eat, are full of large, hard seeds that make them nearly inedible. Modern bananas are the result of thousands of years of selective breeding. Brazil is named after a tree. The Brazil wood tree was highly valued for its red dye, which was extracted from the wood and used to color textiles. When Portuguese explorers arrived in South America, they found vast forests of Brazil wood and began harvesting and exporting it to Europe. The land became known as Terra do Brasil, the land of Brazil wood, which eventually became simply Brazil. The Brazil wood tree is now endangered due to centuries of over-harvesting and habitat loss, but it gave its name to an entire nation. Many other places are also named after plants. The Canary Islands may be named after dogs, but they are also associated with sugarcane, which was extensively cultivated there. The Caribbean gets its name from the Carib people, but the region is also defined by its tropical plants. Plant names are woven into geography, reflecting the importance of plants to human history and culture. We name places after the resources they provide, the crops that grow there, or the distinctive vegetation that defines the landscape. Peanuts are not nuts. They are legumes, related to beans, peas, and lentils. Unlike true nuts, which grow on trees, peanuts develop underground. After the peanut plant flowers above ground, the flower stalk bends downward and pushes the developing seed pod into the soil where the peanuts mature. This unusual growth habit is called geocarpy, and only a few plant species do it. Despite not being true nuts, peanuts contain more protein, niacin, folate, and phytosterols than most actual nuts. They are one of the most widely consumed legumes in the world, used in cooking, eaten as snacks, and processed into peanut butter. Peanuts, like other legumes, form symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria in their roots. These bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms the plant can use, enriching the soil and reducing the need for synthetic fertilizers. Farmers often plant peanuts as a rotation crop to replenish soil nitrogen after growing other crops. Apples float on water because they are 25% air. The flesh of an apple contains air pockets between cells, making the fruit buoyant. This air content also gives apples their crisp texture. When you bite into an apple, you are breaking open thousands of tiny air-filled cells. Apples, along with pears, peaches, apricots, quinces, strawberries, belong to the rose family. This might seem surprising, but roses and these fruits share many structural similarities in their flowers and seeds. Apple trees can live for over 100 years and continue producing fruit throughout their lives. There are thousands of apple varieties, each with distinct flavors, textures, and colors. Most apples grown commercially are propagated by grafting rather than by planting seeds. If you plant an apple seed, the resulting tree will produce apples that are genetically different from the parent tree, often with inferior fruit. To maintain specific varieties, growers graft branches from desired trees onto rootstocks. This technique allows them to clone apple varieties and ensure consistent fruit quality. An average tree can provide enough wood to make 170,100 pencils. This calculation is based on a typical tree producing enough sawn lumber to be turned into that many wooden pencil shafts. Most pencils today are made from softwood trees like cedar. The wood is cut into thin slats. Grooves are cut to hold graphite cores. The cores are inserted, a second slat is glued on top, and the assembly is cut into individual pencils. Trees have been used to make countless products throughout human history. Paper, furniture, buildings, boats, tools, charcoal, and more. Wood is one of the most versatile materials available, strong yet workable, renewable and biodegradable. Sustainable forestry practices aim to harvest trees at a rate that allows forests to regenerate, ensuring a continuous supply of wood while maintaining ecosystem health. However, illegal logging and unsustainable practices continue to threaten forests worldwide. The challenge is balancing human needs for wood products with the need to preserve forests for their ecological and cultural value. Cricket bats are made from willow trees. Specifically, a variety called white willow is prized for its combination of lightness, strength, and shock absorption properties. The wood is carefully selected and aged before being shaped into bats. Baseball bats, in contrast, are typically made from ash or maple, which are harder and denser. Different sports demand different properties from wood, and humans have learned which tree species best meet each need. Wood has been shaped into tools for as long as humans have existed. Before metals, before plastics, there was wood, versatile and abundant, ready to be carved, joined, and formed into anything imagination could conceive. Some flowers bloom only at night. Night-blooming flowers, like evening primrose, moonflower, and night-blooming jasmine, open their petals after sunset and close again before dawn. These flowers are typically pollinated by nocturnal animals such as moths, bats, and beetles. To attract these pollinators in the dark, night-blooming flowers often produce strong, sweet fragrances that can carry long distances. They are also usually white or pale-colored, making them more visible in low light. Some night-blooming flowers also generate heat, warming themselves to volatilize their scent and provide warmth to visiting insects. The Titan arum, also called the corpse flower, produces one of the largest flower structures in the world and blooms rarely, sometimes only once every few years. When it does bloom, it happens at night, and the flower emits a powerful odor resembling rotting flesh. This stench attracts carrion beetles and flies that pollinate the plant. The heat generated by the flower helps disperse the smell across long distances. Watching plants time their activities to night reminds us that the natural world does not sleep. While some organisms rest, others awaken, and the cycle continues unbroken. The leaves of prayer plants fold upward at night, resembling hands pressed together in prayer. This nyctinastic movement is controlled by a pulvinus at the base of each leaf. During the day, the leaves spread horizontally to maximize light capture for photosynthesis. At night, they fold upward, reducing their surface area and conserving water. The movement is so regular that you can almost set a clock by it. Other plants, like the sensitive plant Mimosa pudica, exhibit even more dramatic movements. When touched, its leaves fold inward and droop within seconds, a defensive response that may startle herbivores or make the plant look less appealing to eat. The leaves reopen after a few minutes once the stimulus is gone. These movements show that plants, though lacking muscles and nerves, can respond rapidly to their environment through changes in turgor pressure and cell signaling. The roots of plants anchor them and absorb water and nutrients. But they also store energy. Root vegetables like carrots, beets, turnips, and radishes are swollen roots packed with sugars and starches that the plant stores for future growth. Potatoes, however, are not roots, but underground stems called tubers. Sweet potatoes are true roots, despite their similarity in use to regular potatoes. The distinction between root and stem affects how the plant grows and how farmers cultivate them. But both serve the same basic purpose: storing energy for later use. In nature, these stored reserves help plants survive harsh seasons, sending up new growth when conditions improve. Humans have taken advantage of this storage strategy, selectively breeding plants to produce larger, sweeter, more nutritious storage organs. Mangrove trees grow in salt water. They are among the few tree species that can tolerate saltwater immersion, thriving in coastal areas where freshwater rivers meet the sea. Mangroves have specialized adaptations to deal with salt. Some species filter out salt at the roots, preventing it from entering the plant. Others absorb salt and then excrete it through special glands in their leaves. Still others accumulate salt in old leaves, which then fall off, taking the salt with them. Mangrove forests provide critical ecosystem services. They protect coastlines from erosion and storm surges. They provide nursery habitat for fish and other marine life. They filter pollutants from water, and they store carbon at rates comparable to or exceeding terrestrial forests. Mangrove roots trap sediment and organic matter, building up soil over time and actually creating new land. Despite their importance, mangrove forests are disappearing rapidly, cleared for aquaculture, agriculture, and coastal development. Conservation efforts aim to protect remaining mangroves and restore degraded areas, recognizing that these unique forests are too valuable to lose. There are more microorganisms in a teaspoon of soil than there are people on Earth. Soil is alive, teeming with bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods, and countless other organisms. These microbes decompose organic matter, releasing nutrients that plants can absorb. They form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, protecting them from pathogens and helping them access water and minerals. Fungi and bacteria in soil also produce antibiotics, which is why many of our medical antibiotics were originally discovered in soil samples. Healthy soil is the foundation of healthy plants. Industrial agriculture sometimes degrades soil through heavy tilling, chemical inputs, and monoculture cropping, reducing microbial diversity and soil health. Sustainable practices like crop rotation, cover cropping, reduced tillage, and organic amendments aim to rebuild soil life and fertility. When you dig into rich, dark soil and smell its earthy scent, you are sensing the byproducts of billions of microorganisms working invisibly to cycle nutrients and support plant life. Dandelions are considered weeds by many people, but they are highly nutritious and beneficial. Every part of the dandelion is edible. The leaves can be eaten raw in salads or cooked like spinach. The flowers can be made into wine or fried. The roots can be roasted and ground to make a coffee substitute. Dandelions are rich in vitamins A, C, and K, and minerals like iron and calcium. They have been used in traditional medicine for centuries to treat various ailments. Dandelions are also important for pollinators, providing nectar and pollen early in the spring when few other flowers are blooming. Butterflies, bees, and other insects depend on dandelions as a food source. The fact that dandelions are so often vilified and destroyed shows how cultural attitudes toward plants can be arbitrary. What one person calls a weed, another might call food or medicine. The definition of a weed is simply a plant growing where humans do not want it. A label that says more about us than about the plant. Vines can grow at remarkable speeds. Kudzu, a vine native to Asia, was introduced to the United States in the late 1800s and has since become invasive in the southeastern states. Kudzu can grow up to 30 centimeters per day, covering trees, buildings, power lines, and anything else in its path. It blankets entire forests, smothering native vegetation and killing trees by blocking their access to sunlight. Controlling kudzu is difficult because its roots can grow deep and its vines can spread rapidly. Despite being invasive in North America, kudzu has uses. It is edible, and all parts of the plant can be used in cooking or traditional medicine. Its roots are rich in starch and have been used to make flour. Kudzu can also help prevent soil erosion on steep slopes. The challenge is managing it in places where it has no natural predators or controls, allowing it to grow unchecked. The scent of freshly cut grass is actually a distress signal. When grass is mowed, it releases chemicals called green leaf volatiles. These compounds are produced when plant cells are damaged, and they serve as a warning to nearby plants and a call for help to predators of herbivores. The scent we associate with summer lawns and fresh meadows is the chemical scream of wounded grass. Many people find the smell pleasant, not realizing it is a defense response. This is just one example of how plants communicate chemically. When an insect chews on a leaf, the plant may release compounds that attract predators or parasites of that insect, effectively calling in reinforcements. Plants also release chemicals into the soil through their roots, either to inhibit competitors or to signal beneficial microbes. The air above a forest or field is filled with invisible chemical messages, a language of scent we are only beginning to translate. Trees can live for centuries, but some organisms that resemble trees are even older. The largest fungus ever discovered, a specimen of honey fungus in Oregon, covers nearly 10 square kilometers and is estimated to be over 2,000 years old. The visible mushrooms are just the fruiting bodies. The main organism lives underground as a network of thread-like hyphae that spread through the soil, feeding on tree roots and decaying wood. This enormous fungus is technically a single individual, making it one of the largest and oldest living organisms on Earth. Fungi occupy a unique place in the tree of life. They are neither plants nor animals, but belong to their own kingdom. They cannot photosynthesize like plants, so they obtain nutrients by decomposing organic matter or forming symbiotic relationships with plants. Without fungi, dead plant material would accumulate indefinitely, locking up nutrients and disrupting ecosystems. Fungi recycle nutrients, making them available for new plant growth, and they form the mycorrhizal partnerships that help most plants thrive. The hidden world of fungi beneath our feet is as important to the health of forests as the trees themselves. Plants have been on land for over 400 million years. The first plants to colonize land were simple organisms related to modern mosses and liverworts. They had no roots, no leaves, no flowers, just simple structures that could absorb water and nutrients from their surroundings. These early pioneers transformed Earth's surface, breaking down rock into soil, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere, and creating conditions that would eventually allow more complex plants and animals to evolve. The evolution of roots was a major breakthrough, allowing plants to anchor themselves firmly and access water deep underground. The evolution of vascular tissue, specialized cells that transport water and nutrients throughout the plant, enabled plants to grow taller and colonize drier environments. The evolution of seeds was another revolution, allowing plants to reproduce without standing water, spreading their offspring across vast distances. Each of these innovations opened new ecological niches and led to explosions of diversity. Today, plants occupy nearly every habitat on Earth, from polar ice to scorching deserts, from mountain peaks to ocean depths. They have evolved an astonishing array of forms and strategies, each one a solution to the challenge of surviving and reproducing in a particular environment. The smell of rain on dry earth has a name. It is called petrichor, and it comes partly from oils that plants release during dry periods. These oils accumulate on rocks and soil, and when rain falls, the water releases them into the air, along with a compound called geosmin, produced by soil bacteria. The combined scent is distinctively earthy and fresh, a smell that many people find pleasant and calming. Plants release these oils as a survival strategy during drought. The oils may help slow down seed germination until moisture is more reliably available, or they may inhibit the growth of competing plants. Whatever their original function, these compounds have become part of the sensory experience of rain, a chemical signature of the transition from dryness to moisture, of the earth coming back to life. Forests influence weather patterns. Large forests generate their own clouds and rainfall through the massive amounts of water vapor they release. A single large tree can transpire hundreds of liters of water per day, sending moisture into the atmosphere where it condenses and falls as rain. In the Amazon, about half of the rainfall is recycled moisture from the forest itself. Trees also cool the air through shade and evapotranspiration, creating local climate zones that are significantly cooler and more humid than surrounding areas. When forests are cleared, these effects disappear. Temperatures rise, humidity drops, and rainfall patterns change, sometimes dramatically. Deforested areas can become drier and hotter, making it difficult for forests to regrow, even if the land is left alone. This feedback loop is one reason why forest conservation is so critical. Forests do not just respond to climate. They help create it, shaping temperature and precipitation patterns across entire regions. Some plants can count. The Venus flytrap can distinguish between a single stimulus, which might be a raindrop or a bit of debris, and repeated stimuli that indicate prey. The trap will only close if 2 trigger hairs are touched within about 20 seconds, or if one hair is touched twice in quick succession. This counting mechanism prevents the plant from wasting energy closing on false alarms. Once the trap closes, the plant continues to monitor what is inside. If the trapped object continues to struggle and stimulate sensory hairs inside the trap, the plant interprets this as prey and seals the trap completely, beginning the digestion process. If nothing is moving inside, the trap reopens after a day or two. The plant is essentially making decisions based on information gathered over time, a form of short-term memory that allows it to respond appropriately to different situations. This behavior challenges the notion that plants are passive organisms. They sense their environment, process information, and respond in ways that maximize their survival, all without a brain or nervous system. Photosynthesis is not perfectly efficient. Plants typically convert only 3 to 6% of the light energy they receive into chemical energy stored in glucose. The rest is lost as heat or reflected away. This might seem wasteful, but it is actually quite remarkable given the complexity of the process. The inefficiency comes from several sources. Not all wavelengths of light can be used equally well. The process of converting light energy into chemical bonds involves multiple steps, each with some energy loss. And plants must balance energy capture with other needs like staying cool and avoiding damage from too much light. Scientists are working to understand the limits of photosynthetic efficiency and whether it might be possible to engineer plants that capture and use light more effectively. Improving photosynthesis, even slightly, could have enormous implications for agriculture, allowing crops to produce more food with the same amount of land, water, and fertilizer. Some researchers are also exploring whether artificial photosynthesis could be developed, creating systems that mimic plant processes to generate fuels or other useful chemicals from sunlight and carbon dioxide. Bamboo forests are remarkably quiet. Because bamboo stems are hollow and flexible, they absorb sound rather than reflecting it. Walking through a bamboo grove feels hushed and peaceful, the thick growth muffling sounds from outside. The stems creak and rustle in the wind, producing their own gentle music. Bamboo has been used by humans for thousands of years. Its fast growth, strength, and versatility make it valuable for construction, tools, paper, textiles, and food. Bamboo shoots are a nutritious vegetable eaten throughout Asia. The mature stems, though grass rather than wood, are as strong as some hardwoods and can be used for building everything from scaffolding to houses to furniture. Bamboo fiber can be processed into fabric that is soft, breathable, and naturally antimicrobial. As a crop, bamboo has many advantages. It grows quickly without requiring replanting. Its extensive root system prevents soil erosion, and it sequesters carbon at rates higher than many trees. However, bamboo plantations are not equivalent to natural forests in terms of biodiversity. Monoculture bamboo lacks the complex ecosystem of a diverse forest. Sustainable bamboo cultivation requires balancing productivity with ecological considerations. Trees in a forest are not evenly distributed. They compete for light, water, and nutrients, and this competition creates patterns. In dense forests, trees grow tall and straight, reaching for sunlight with a minimum of low branches. The forest floor is shaded and relatively open. In more open areas, trees spread out, developing fuller crowns and lower branches. The spacing between trees affects their shape, growth rate, and even their wood properties. Foresters have long known that thinning young forests, removing some trees to reduce competition, can result in faster growth and higher quality timber from the remaining trees. However, natural forests have a complexity that managed forests often lack. Dead standing trees provide habitat for cavity-nesting birds and insects. Fallen logs become nurse logs, slowly decaying while supporting new growth. Small gaps created by falling trees allow light to reach the forest floor, triggering bursts of new growth. The mix of young and old, living and dead, creates a mosaic of microhabitats that support diverse communities of organisms. A healthy forest is not tidy or uniform. It is messy, diverse, and constantly changing. Plant stems transport water through a process that seems to defy gravity. Water molecules are pulled up from the roots to the leaves through a combination of capillary action, root pressure, and transpiration pull. The most important mechanism is transpiration pull. As water evaporates from leaf surfaces through stomata, it creates negative pressure that pulls more water up from below. Water molecules are cohesive, sticking to each other through hydrogen bonds, so when one molecule is pulled upward, it drags others with it. This creates a continuous column of water stretching from roots to leaves. The system works like a drinking straw, except it is being pulled from the top rather than sucked from the bottom. In tall trees, water can be pulled up over 100 meters, a remarkable feat achieved without pumps or mechanical energy. The system is vulnerable to disruption. If an air bubble enters the water column, it can break the cohesion and create an embolism that blocks water flow through that particular vessel. Trees have redundant vascular pathways to work around such blockages, but severe drought stress can cause widespread embolisms that damage or destroy the tree's ability to transport water. Moss has no roots. Instead, it has tiny hair-like structures called rhizoids that anchor it to surfaces. Moss absorbs water and nutrients directly through its leaves, which are often only one cell thick. This simple structure means moss can dry out completely during droughts and then revive when water becomes available again. Some mosses can survive being dried and rehydrated repeatedly over many years. Mosses grow in places where other plants struggle. They colonize rocks, tree bark, compacted soil, and even concrete. They are often the first plants to grow in disturbed areas, beginning the process of succession that will eventually lead to more complex plant communities. Mosses play important ecological roles. They retain moisture, prevent erosion, provide habitat for tiny invertebrates, and contribute to nutrient cycling. In boreal forests, thick carpets of moss insulate the soil, keeping it cool and preserving permafrost. In old-growth forests, mosses and lichens drape from branches in thick curtains, absorbing moisture from fog and rain and providing nesting material for birds. Despite their simplicity, or perhaps because of it, mosses are remarkably successful. They have existed for over 400 million years, surviving mass extinctions and adapting to changing climates. The color of fall leaves is not created, but revealed. During the growing season, leaves are packed with chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures light for photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is so abundant that it masks other pigments present in the leaf. As autumn approaches and temperatures cool, trees begin preparing for winter. Deciduous trees cut off water and nutrients to their leaves and begin breaking down chlorophyll to recover its nitrogen and other valuable components. As the green chlorophyll disappears, other pigments that were always present become visible. Carotenoids, which produce yellow and orange colors, are revealed in leaves of hickory, ash, birch, and poplar. Anthocyanins, which produce red and purple colors, are actually manufactured in autumn in response to bright light and cool temperatures. Maples, oaks, and sumacs develop brilliant reds through anthocyanin production. The exact colors and timing depend on weather conditions. Warm, sunny days and cool nights produce the most intense colors. Drought or early frost can dull the display or cause leaves to drop before coloring. The annual transformation of forests, from green to gold, orange and crimson, is one of nature's most spectacular displays. A visible reminder of the chemical changes happening inside every leaf as the season turns. Trees have growth rings because they grow in seasonal patterns. In spring, when water and nutrients are abundant, trees produce large, light-colored cells that form springwood. In summer, growth slows and cells become smaller and darker, forming summerwood. This creates visible rings, with each ring representing 1 year of growth. By counting rings, scientists can determine a tree's age. By measuring ring width, they can infer growing conditions in past years. Wide rings indicate good growing conditions, with plenty of water and warmth. Narrow rings indicate drought, disease, or other stresses. Trees of the same species growing in the same region will show similar ring patterns, influenced by the same weather and climate. By comparing ring patterns from living trees with patterns from old wood, scientists have built chronologies extending back thousands of years. This field, called dendrochronology, allows researchers to date wooden artifacts, study past climates, and understand how forests responded to historical events like volcanic eruptions or droughts. The rings in a tree trunk are not just markers of age, they are records of environmental history, chronicles written in wood. Plants use a variety of strategies to disperse their seeds. Some produce seeds with wings or parachutes that catch the wind and float far from the parent plant. Maple seeds spin like helicopters. Dandelion seeds drift on tiny parachutes. Pine seeds have papery wings. Wind dispersal works best for small, lightweight seeds and is most effective in open habitats where wind can carry seeds long distances. Other plants produce fleshy fruits that animals eat. The seeds pass through the animal's digestive system unharmed and are deposited in new locations along with a package of fertilizer. Many forest plants depend on birds, mammals, or even reptiles to disperse their seeds. Some plants have sticky or barbed seeds that attach to animal fur or feathers, hitchhiking to new locations. Burdock burrs inspired the invention of Velcro after a Swiss engineer noticed how tenaciously they stuck to his dog's coat. Some plants, like jewelweed and violets, have explosive seed pods that burst open when ripe, flinging seeds several feet away. Coconuts float on ocean currents, colonizing distant islands. Each dispersal strategy represents a solution to the problem of reproduction, getting seeds away from the parent plant, where they will not have to compete for resources, and where they might find new opportunities to germinate and grow. The tallest grass in the world is bamboo. Some species can reach over 30 meters in height, forming dense forests that look more like woodlands than grasslands. Bamboo culms, the name for bamboo stems, are hollow between nodes, which makes them light yet strong. This structural efficiency allows bamboo to reach impressive heights while remaining flexible enough to bend in strong winds without breaking. Bamboo has a unique growth pattern. All bamboo culms in a grove are connected underground through a network of rhizomes. When conditions are right, multiple shoots emerge simultaneously, sometimes hundreds of them. These shoots grow to their full height in a single growing season, typically just a few months. Once a culm reaches its maximum height, it stops growing taller and begins to harden and mature, a process that takes several years. Bamboo flowering is mysterious and dramatic. Most bamboo species flower synchronously, meaning all plants of that species around the world bloom at the same time, regardless of climate or location. The flowering occurs on cycles that can be decades long. Some species flower every 60 or 120 years. After flowering and producing seeds, the entire plant dies, leaving bamboo forests suddenly empty. The reason for this synchronized flowering remains a subject of scientific debate, but it may be a strategy to overwhelm seed predators with a sudden abundance of food, ensuring that some seeds survive. Plants adapt to their environment in countless ways. Cacti in deserts have thick, waxy skin, shallow, widespread roots, and the ability to photosynthesize with closed stomata during the day to minimize water loss. Alpine plants grow low to the ground to avoid harsh winds, and many produce dark-colored leaves that absorb heat. Arctic plants complete their entire life cycle in the brief summer, growing, flowering, and setting seed in just a few weeks. Aquatic plants have specialized tissues with large air spaces that provide buoyancy and allow oxygen to reach submerged parts. Carnivorous plants in nutrient-poor bogs supplement their diet by trapping insects. Epiphytes, plants that grow on tree branches in rainforests, have specialized roots that absorb moisture from the air and collect falling debris. Each adaptation is a response to specific environmental challenges, a trait that increases the plant's ability to survive and reproduce in that particular place. The diversity of plant forms reflects the diversity of habitats on Earth, each environment selecting for different solutions to the universal challenges of obtaining light, water, nutrients, and reproducing successfully. Lichens are not plants, but rather partnerships between fungi and algae or cyanobacteria. The fungal partner provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food. Together, they create an organism that can survive in extreme environments where neither partner could live alone. Lichens colonize bare rock, tree bark, Arctic tundra, and desert surfaces. They are pioneers, often the first organisms to grow in harsh places. Over time, lichens break down rock into soil, paving the way for mosses and eventually other plants. Lichens grow extremely slowly, sometimes only a few millimeters per year, but they can live for centuries or even millennia. Some lichen species are highly sensitive to air pollution, making them useful indicators of air quality. The disappearance of certain lichens from an area can signal increasing pollution levels. Other lichens accumulate heavy metals and radioactive elements from the environment, making them useful for monitoring contamination. Despite their hardiness, many lichen species are threatened by habitat loss and air quality changes. They are a reminder that even the toughest organisms have limits, and that environmental changes can affect the most unexpected creatures. The largest flower in the world is Rafflesia arnoldii. A single bloom can be over 1 meter in diameter and weigh up to 10 kilograms. The flower has no leaves, stems, or roots. It is a parasite that grows entirely inside the tissues of a host vine, emerging only when it is ready to bloom. The flower smells like rotting flesh, which attracts carrion flies and beetles that pollinate it. The bloom lasts only a few days before wilting and disappearing. Rafflesia is rare and difficult to study because it spends most of its life hidden inside the host plant, invisible except when flowering. Another contender for largest flower is the Titan arum, which produces a massive flower structure that can be over 3 meters tall. Like Rafflesia, it smells of decay and blooms rarely and briefly. These giant flowers demonstrate that size is not always an advantage. They require enormous resources to produce and have very specific pollination needs, making them vulnerable to extinction. Many populations of both species are endangered due to habitat loss and the rarity of successful pollination events. Trees communicate not only through underground fungal networks, but also through the air. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases volatile organic compounds that can warn neighboring trees of the threat. Nearby trees detect these chemical signals and begin producing defensive compounds like tannins and resins that make their leaves less palatable to insects. This preemptive defense can reduce damage from herbivores. The chemicals released can also attract predators and parasites of the herbivores, essentially calling in reinforcements. For example, some trees release chemicals that attract wasps that parasitize caterpillars. The trees are turning their enemies' enemies into allies. This type of indirect defense is common in nature, but it is remarkable that trees, often thought of as passive organisms, actively manipulate their environment to defend themselves. The ability to communicate and respond to threats shows that plants have sophisticated systems for detecting danger and coordinating responses, even without brains or nervous systems. Sequoia trees have bark that can be over 30 centimeters thick. This thick, fibrous bark is highly resistant to fire. Wildfires that would destroy other trees may only scorch the surface of a sequoia's bark, leaving the living tissue beneath unharmed. Sequoias have evolved with fire as part of their life cycle. Their cones require heat to open and release seeds. The ashes from fires provide nutrients, and the clearing of undergrowth creates openings where seedlings can establish themselves. For millions of years, periodic low-intensity fires burned through sequoia groves, maintaining the ecosystem in a state that favored the giant trees. Modern fire suppression has disrupted this cycle. Without regular small fires, undergrowth accumulates, and when fires do occur, they can be catastrophic, burning hot enough to damage even sequoia bark. Forest managers are now reintroducing controlled burns and allowing some natural fires to burn, recognizing that fire is not a threat to these forests, but an essential part of their ecology. The relationship between sequoias and fire is a reminder that ecosystems are shaped by disturbances, and that protecting nature sometimes means allowing events that seem destructive. Some plants are incredibly toxic. The castor bean plant produces ricin, one of the most poisonous substances known. A single seed contains enough ricin to cause severe illness or worse if ingested. Oleander, a popular ornamental shrub, contains toxins throughout all parts of the plant. Even honey made from oleander nectar can be harmful. Foxglove contains digitalis, which affects the heart and can be dangerous in even small amounts. Though in carefully controlled doses, it is also a valuable medicine. Poison ivy and poison oak contain urushiol, an oil that causes severe skin reactions in most people. These plants evolved toxins as defenses against herbivores. The chemicals are costly for the plant to produce, but they provide protection that allows the plant to survive where it might otherwise be consumed. Humans have learned to respect these plants, and traditional knowledge often includes detailed information about which plants to avoid. At the same time, we have learned to use some plant toxins as tools. Pesticides, medicines, and other useful compounds often come from toxic plants, carefully isolated and controlled. The line between poison and medicine is often just a matter of dose. Photosynthesis happens in two stages. The light-dependent reactions occur in the thylakoid membranes of chloroplasts and require sunlight. These reactions split water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct, and generate energy-carrying molecules called ATP and NADPH. The light-independent reactions, also called the Calvin cycle, occur in the stroma of the chloroplast and do not directly require light. These reactions use the ATP and NADPH from the light-dependent reactions to convert carbon dioxide into glucose. The entire process is remarkably complex, involving dozens of enzymes and intermediate compounds. The key enzyme that captures carbon dioxide is called rubisco, and it is probably the most abundant protein on Earth, present in huge quantities in every photosynthetic organism. Despite its importance, rubisco is not particularly efficient, and it occasionally makes mistakes, binding to oxygen instead of carbon dioxide in a process called photorespiration. This reduces the efficiency of photosynthesis, and plants have evolved various mechanisms to minimize photorespiration. Understanding these processes in detail has taken decades of research and continues to reveal new complexities. Forests are incredibly biodiverse. Tropical rainforests, though they cover less than 7% of Earth's land surface, contain more than half of all terrestrial species. A single hectare of rainforest can contain over 600 species of trees, more than exist in all of North America. The canopy is a world unto itself, with species that live their entire lives in the treetops and never descend to the forest floor. Insects are especially diverse, with estimates suggesting that millions of insect species remain undiscovered in tropical forests. The biodiversity of forests is not random. It reflects millions of years of evolution, with species adapting to specific niches and co-evolving with partners and competitors. Pollinators and plants evolve together, each shaping the other. Predators and prey engage in evolutionary arms races. Mutualists develop ever more intricate dependencies. The result is a web of relationships so complex that we are only beginning to understand it. When forests are destroyed, we lose not just the trees, but entire ecosystems of interdependent species, many of which will disappear before we even know they existed. The root systems of trees can be as extensive as their crowns. Roots spread wide in search of water and nutrients, often extending far beyond the drip line of the branches above. Some trees have deep taproots that reach water far underground, while others have shallow but extensive root systems that cover large areas. Tree roots are often interconnected, not just through mycorrhizal fungi, but through direct root grafting, where roots of adjacent trees fuse together. This creates a physical connection through which water, nutrients, and even chemical signals can flow. Root grafts are especially common in trees of the same species growing close together. They may allow trees to support each other, sharing resources when one tree is stressed. They can also transmit diseases, so that a pathogen infecting one tree can spread through the root network to neighbors. Root systems are largely invisible, hidden beneath the soil, but they are essential to tree health and stability. Damage to roots from construction, soil compaction, or pavement can harm trees years later. Protecting root zones is as important as protecting the visible parts of trees. You have wandered through the quiet marvels of the plant world tonight. From the smallest seedling to the most ancient tree. From underground networks to flowers that bloom in darkness. Plants live in ways both strange and familiar. They build the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the landscapes we love. They communicate in chemical whispers, move in slow spirals, and endure for centuries. Each plant is a patient experiment in survival, shaped by time and place into forms that meet the challenges of existence. If this journey has brought you peace, I invite you to return another night. There are more wonders to explore, more quiet facts to soothe your restless mind. But for now, let it all go. Let your thoughts soften and blur. Let your breathing slow and deepen. The plants will keep growing through the night, leaves breathing out oxygen, roots reaching deeper into the earth, flowers preparing to open with the dawn. The world continues its ancient rhythms without needing you to watch. You have done enough for today. Close your eyes, rest, and dream of green, growing things. Seeds are marvels of biological engineering. They contain everything needed to start a new plant, packaged in a form that can survive months or years of dormancy. Inside each seed is an embryonic plant, a tiny root and shoot waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Surrounding the embryo is stored food, either starch, protein, or oil, that will nourish the seedling until it can photosynthesize on its own. The seed coat protects everything from damage, desiccation, and disease. Some seeds can survive extreme conditions. They can be frozen, heated, dried, and even pass through animal digestive systems and still germinate when conditions improve. The smallest seeds, produced by some orchids, are like dust particles, containing barely enough cells to be visible. The largest seeds, from the coco de mer palm, can weigh over 20 kilograms. Seeds have evolved countless strategies to ensure they germinate at the right time and place. Some require fire to break dormancy, ensuring they sprout after wildfires when competition is reduced and nutrients are abundant. Some need to be frozen for a period, guaranteeing they will not germinate until after winter has passed. Some must pass through an animal's gut, which scarifies the seed coat and deposits the seed in nutrient-rich waste. Seeds are time capsules, carrying genetic information from one generation to the next, and allowing plants to wait patiently for favorable conditions. Plants can live at extreme altitudes. Some species grow on mountain slopes above 6,000 meters, where air is thin, temperatures are frigid, and the growing season is just a few weeks long. These alpine plants grow in cushions or mats that hug the ground, avoiding the worst of the wind. Their leaves are often thick and dark-colored to absorb maximum heat. They may photosynthesize at temperatures just above freezing and can survive being buried under snow for months. At the other extreme, seagrasses grow in the ocean, the only flowering plants that have fully returned to marine life. They anchor in sandy or muddy bottoms and photosynthesize underwater, tolerating salt water that would destroy most plants. Mangroves occupy the transition zone between land and sea, growing in salty tidal areas that flood daily. Desert plants endure searing heat and minimal water. Each of these extreme environments has selected for plants with specialized adaptations that allow them to survive where others cannot. The relationship between plants and pollinators is one of nature's most intricate partnerships. Flowers evolved to attract animals that would carry pollen from one plant to another, enabling cross-pollination and genetic diversity. In return, pollinators receive food in the form of nectar or pollen. Different flowers attract different pollinators through color, shape, scent, and timing. Bees are attracted to blue and yellow flowers with sweet scents and landing platforms. Hummingbirds prefer red tubular flowers with abundant nectar. Moths visit white or pale flowers that bloom at night and produce strong fragrance. Beetles are drawn to large, bowl-shaped flowers with fruity or spicy scents. Flies, including carrion flies, pollinate flowers that smell like rotting meat. Each pollinator has preferences, and each plant has evolved to match the preferences of its most effective pollinators. Some relationships are highly specialized. Certain orchids can only be pollinated by one species of bee. Some figs can only be pollinated by one species of wasp. These intimate partnerships are the result of millions of years of co-evolution, each species shaping the other. The beauty of flowers is not random decoration, but functional design, advertising to pollinators with signals we happen to find beautiful. Grasses are among the most successful plants on Earth. They dominate vast areas of every continent except Antarctica, forming prairies, savannas, steppes, and pampas. Grasses have a unique growth pattern. Unlike most plants, which grow from the tips of their stems, grasses grow from the base. This means they can be grazed or mowed repeatedly and continue to grow. The growing point, called the meristem, is located low on the plant where it is protected from herbivores. This adaptation allowed grasses to thrive alongside grazing animals. In fact, grasses and grazers co-evolved, each shaping the other. Grasses provide food for countless herbivores, from insects to elephants. In turn, grazing stimulates grass growth, prevents woody plants from encroaching, and recycles nutrients through animal waste. Grasslands are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth, converting sunlight into plant matter that supports enormous numbers of animals. Many of our most important crops are grasses. Wheat, rice, corn, barley, oats, rye, and sugarcane all belong to the grass family. These crops feed billions of people and form the foundation of agriculture worldwide. The success of human civilization has been intertwined with the cultivation of grasses. Wood is one of the most remarkable materials produced by living organisms. It is strong, yet lightweight, durable, yet workable, and it grows from air, water, and sunlight. The cells that make up wood are mostly dead when functional, forming hollow tubes that transport water and provide structural support. The walls of these cells are made of cellulose and lignin, giving wood its strength and resistance to decay. Different trees produce wood with different properties. Balsa wood is extremely light and soft. Oak is hard and durable. Teak resists water and insects. Ebony is dense and smooth. Each type of wood has characteristics that make it suitable for different purposes. Wood has been used for thousands of years to build shelter, make tools, create fire, and craft art. Even today, with modern materials like steel, concrete, and plastic, wood remains essential. It is a renewable resource when harvested sustainably, and it stores carbon that would otherwise enter the atmosphere. Growing trees capture carbon dioxide through photosynthesis and lock it away in wood for decades or centuries. When we use wood in buildings or furniture, we are storing carbon in a useful form rather than releasing it as pollution. Some trees shed their bark regularly. Eucalyptus and sycamore trees peel away outer layers of bark as they grow, revealing smooth, colorful inner bark beneath. This shedding may help the tree remove lichens, mosses, and parasites that grow on bark surfaces. It may also be a fire adaptation, as loose bark can carry fire up into the crown, while smooth bark without accumulation of dead material is less flammable. Paper birch trees have thin, papery bark that peels in horizontal strips. The white color reflects sunlight, keeping the bark cool and reducing the risk of sunscald in winter. Indigenous peoples used birch bark to make canoes, containers, and shelters, taking advantage of its waterproof and flexible properties. Different bark types reflect different adaptations. Thick, corky bark insulates and protects from fire. Smooth bark discourages insects and fungi. Thorny bark deters climbing animals. Bark color can affect how much heat is absorbed or reflected. The outer surface of a tree, often overlooked, is actually a complex organ that protects the living tissues beneath and mediates the tree's relationship with its environment. Forests store enormous amounts of carbon. Trees absorb carbon dioxide during photosynthesis and incorporate the carbon into their tissues. A mature forest can store hundreds of tons of carbon per hectare in living trees, dead wood, and soil. Old-growth forests, which have not been disturbed for centuries, are especially important carbon stores because they contain massive trees and deep accumulations of organic matter in the soil. When forests are cut down or burned, this stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, contributing to climate change. This is why deforestation is such a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. Conversely, growing forests absorb carbon from the atmosphere, acting as carbon sinks that help mitigate climate change. Reforestation and afforestation, planting trees in areas where forests have been cleared or never existed, are important strategies for increasing carbon storage. However, not all forests are equal in their ability to store carbon. Tropical rainforests store large amounts in their biomass, but relatively little in the soil. Boreal forests store less in trees, but have thick layers of slowly decomposing organic matter in the cold soil. Protecting existing forests, especially old growth, is crucial for maintaining carbon storage, while planting new forests can help remove some of the excess carbon dioxide we have already released. Plants photosynthesize primarily during daylight, but they respire continuously. Respiration is the process by which plants break down sugars to release energy for growth and metabolism. It consumes oxygen and releases carbon dioxide, the opposite of photosynthesis. At night, when photosynthesis stops, plants are net consumers of oxygen. However, During the day, photosynthesis produces much more oxygen than respiration consumes, so plants are net producers of oxygen overall. The balance between photosynthesis and respiration determines how much a plant grows. If respiration exceeds photosynthesis, the plant loses mass. If photosynthesis exceeds respiration, the plant accumulates sugars and grows. Environmental factors like temperature affect this balance. Warmer temperatures increase respiration rates more than they increase photosynthesis, which is one reason why extremely hot conditions can stress plants and reduce growth even if water is available. Understanding the balance between these two fundamental processes helps us predict how plants will respond to changing climates. Tree rings tell stories beyond just age and growth rate. They can reveal information about past climate, fire history, insect outbreaks, and even earthquakes. Frost rings, formed when late spring frosts damage growing cells, appear as dark lines in the wood. Fire scars show up as charred or damaged tissue that the tree grew around. Insect outbreaks cause years of reduced growth, visible as tight clusters of narrow rings. In regions with strong seasonality, rings are distinct and easy to count. In tropical regions, where growth is continuous, trees may not form clear rings, making age determination difficult. Some trees produce false rings, forming more than one ring per year if growing conditions fluctuate dramatically within a season. Despite these complications, tree rings remain one of the most valuable sources of information about past environments. By building chronologies that extend back thousands of years using overlapping samples from living trees, dead trees, and ancient timbers, scientists can reconstruct climate patterns from long before instrumental records began. Pollen is plant sperm packaged for transport. Each pollen grain contains the male genetic material needed to fertilize a flower's egg cell. Pollen grains are microscopic and remarkably diverse. Each plant species produces distinctively shaped pollen that can be identified under a microscope. Some pollen is smooth, some is spiny, some has elaborate patterns of pores and ridges. The shape and surface texture affect how pollen travels and sticks to pollinators. Wind-pollinated plants produce abundant, lightweight pollen that can drift on air currents for miles. This is why wind-pollinated plants like grasses and ragweed are common causes of allergies. They release clouds of pollen into the air, and some inevitably ends up in human noses. Animal-pollinated plants produce less pollen, but it is stickier and often larger, designed to adhere to the bodies of visiting animals. Pollen analysis, the study of pollen preserved in sediments, provides insights into past vegetation and climate. Because pollen is durable and distinctive, scientists can identify which plants grew in an area thousands of years ago by examining pollen deposited in lake beds or peat bogs. This helps reconstruct how plant communities changed over time in response to climate shifts, human activity, or natural disturbances. The largest leaves in the plant kingdom belong to the raffia palm. A single leaf can be over 25 meters long, the length of a tennis court. These enormous leaves are compound, divided into many leaflets arranged along a central stalk, which makes them more flexible and less likely to be damaged by wind. The large surface area captures maximum sunlight in the shaded understory of tropical forests where these palms grow. Other plants have evolved extremely small leaves as an adaptation to dry or windy conditions. Small leaves lose less water to evaporation and are less likely to be torn by wind. Some desert shrubs have reduced their leaves to tiny scales or spines, conducting photosynthesis in their green stems instead. Leaf size and shape are finely tuned to environmental conditions, balancing the need to capture sunlight with the need to conserve water and withstand physical stresses. Plant hormones coordinate growth and responses to environment. Auxins promote cell elongation and are involved in phototropism, the bending of plants toward light. Gibberellins stimulate stem growth and seed germination. Cytokinins promote cell division and delay senescence. Ethylene gas triggers fruit ripening and leaf drop. Abscisic acid helps plants respond to stress by closing stomata to conserve water. These hormones are produced in tiny amounts but have powerful effects, moving through the plant and triggering responses far from where they are produced. The interactions between different hormones are complex, with the balance determining how a plant develops and responds to its environment. Understanding plant hormones has practical applications in agriculture. Ethylene can be used to ripen fruit. Auxins are used as rooting hormones to help cuttings develop roots. Gibberellins can increase crop yields. Manipulating hormone levels allows us to control plant growth and development in ways that benefit human needs. Plants have immune systems. When a plant is infected by a virus, bacterium, or fungus, it can recognize the invader and mount a defense. The infected cells may deliberately die to prevent the pathogen from spreading, a response called hypersensitive response. The plant may produce antimicrobial compounds to destroy the invader. It may strengthen cell walls to prevent penetration. It may even send signals throughout the plant, activating defenses in distant tissues that have not yet been attacked, a phenomenon called systemic acquired resistance. Some plants can recognize specific pathogens through receptor proteins that detect molecular patterns associated with invaders. When these receptors are triggered, they initiate a cascade of defensive responses. This is similar to how animal immune systems work, recognizing and responding to threats. Plants cannot run from danger or fight with teeth and claws, so they have evolved sophisticated chemical and structural defenses that allow them to resist infection and heal damage. The constant evolutionary battle between plants and pathogens drives the development of new defenses and new ways to overcome those defenses. Many familiar houseplants come from tropical forests. Philodendrons, monsteras, ferns, orchids and bromeliads are native to rainforest understories where they grow in shade. This is why they tolerate low light conditions indoors. They evolved to capture filtered light beneath a dense canopy. Many are epiphytes, naturally growing on tree branches rather than in soil, which is why they tolerate the small pots and limited root space of indoor culture. Snake plants and succulents come from drier regions and tolerate neglect and irregular watering. Understanding where a plant comes from helps us care for it properly. Tropical plants need humidity and warmth. Desert plants need bright light and infrequent water. Temperate plants often need cool periods to trigger blooming. Bringing plants indoors connects us with distant ecosystems and allows us to appreciate plant diversity up close. Caring for plants also teaches patience and observation, as plants grow on their own timescales and respond slowly to changes in their environment. The study of plants, botany, is one of the oldest sciences. Ancient civilizations studied plants to identify food sources, medicines, and useful materials. Theophrastus, a Greek philosopher, wrote about plant classification and growth over 2,000 years ago. Dioscorides, a Greek physician, compiled a pharmacopoeia describing the medicinal properties of hundreds of plants. This knowledge passed down and expanded through the centuries. During the age of exploration, botanists traveled the world, collecting and describing new species, bringing back plants that would transform agriculture and gardens. Linnaeus developed the system of binomial nomenclature still used today to name species. Darwin studied plant movements and adaptations, developing ideas about evolution. Modern botany uses tools like DNA sequencing, electron microscopy, and computer modeling to understand plant biology at ever finer scales. Yet the fundamental questions remain the same. How do plants work? How did they evolve? How do they interact with their environment and with each other? What can they teach us? As we face challenges like climate change, food security, and biodiversity loss, understanding plants is more important than ever. They are the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems, and our fate is intertwined with theirs. And so, we close this gentle exploration of the botanical world. You have traveled from the microscopic machinery of chloroplasts to the towering height of redwoods, from the ancient bristlecones to the fleeting blooms that open for a single night, from roots delving deep into darkness to leaves spreading wide in light. Plants surround us, often unnoticed, quietly doing the work that makes life possible. They turn sunlight into food, carbon dioxide into oxygen, and raw minerals into living tissue. They connect soil to sky, past to future, organism to ecosystem. If tonight's journey has given you a moment of calm, a breath of peace, then it has served its purpose. The plants will continue their slow, patient work while you rest. Tomorrow, they will still be growing, still reaching toward the light, still turning the wheel of seasons with quiet grace. There is no hurry in their world, no rush, only the steady accumulation of days and years, the gentle persistence of life. You have done enough for today. Close your eyes, rest, and dream of green growing things.